Welcome back to Blue Pigment Podcast. Today, I'm going to be joined by Gareth Smith. He's a former Royal Marine. He's now a paramedic and a poet. His work is phenomenal, and I'm really excited about getting his work into your ears and telling you where to find his fantastic poetry. Coming up after this poem by Gareth Smith.
Play. I got to a stage in life where I took everything so serious, forgetting the mysterious nature of the intricacies I was so oblivious to. But as I begin to age, I've lost all my rage. I've exchanged this for play. My inner child is happy because it has allowed me to be wild, laughing, joking, and undefined. Some days it's allowed me to cry. But all these emotions now guide me through my complicated mind with such ease, as life's too short, with no guarantees.
Right, if you want, mate, we'll just crack straight into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Blue Pigment Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Gareth Smith. He's a former Royal Marine Commando. He's now a paramedic and a physician associate. Phenomenal poet, and I want to dive straight into your poetry, Gareth. I've listened to a lot of your stuff, mostly on Instagram. And for me, I find it really, really easy to connect to. And I'm not sure why. And it might be just because we've got a similarity in backgrounds being forces and the struggles that you've seemed to have had. But each of your poems is a little story, which explains a lot. So my main question really would be is, you really hold your heart on your sleeve in your poetry and really put across, different thoughts, feelings, and emotions. How have you built up your self-confidence to be able to portray your emotions in such a connective way?
It's a good question. Good straight into the deep end.
Yeah.
I guess I'd have to go back to our younger days, sort of being a Royal Marine. I never would put my heart on my shoulder. When I left the Corps as well, I never would. So it's only really over the last 5 years that I thought, sod it, why do we have to hide our emotions and hide our feelings? Why can't we actually discuss how things move and flow through us? One of my favorite quotes ever is, what other people think of us is none of our business. So writing poetry really helped me process my thoughts and feelings and able to get them onto paper, write them down. And then by reading them back, I can actually go, yeah, that's how I feel. And I guess I built the confidence up that way. I always had, being a Royal Marine, you've always got this air of confidence about you, but going from something like that into writing and reciting poetry is completely different. So I guess I've taken aspects of that confidence and aspects of my self-worth and utilize that into to try and understand how I feel and why I feel certain ways. And yeah, I found poetry was the way that helped me process my emotions.
That's the best answer you could have given, I think. I've been through the same journey, I believe, as you. I write the occasional poem, but when I write poetry, I would actually say they're quite childlike in the way I write. A lot of rhythm and rhyme, but really, I write in a way that tries to keep that masculine side of me alive. I don't want people to read the poem and go, "Oh, that guy's he's gone all soppy, he's gone all soft," which actually has the reverse effect, because if I'm concerned about that, it actually says more about me than it does what people might say about me. So the quote that you've just said at the beginning of your answer there is spot on, because I do, and a lot of people do, concern themselves with other people's opinions, often too much. And it's actually really liberating when you don't give a fuck anymore. When you just like, I don't care what other people think about you. And it probably comes with wisdom and age. But that is exceptionally enlightening, is that feeling of not caring of others' opinions anymore. And it actually allows you to enjoy your life a lot more, which is one of your poems that I've just recently listened to was Play. And even in the video that you've got accompanying that poem, you know, you're in the river, you're playing about in the waterfall and stuff like that. And it's really good to see that confidence coming out of somebody that can be that way in front of social media and all that sort of stuff. What would you say to all these lads that are, or, you know, lads and ladies that are in the forces still, that are kind of not clinging on to themselves and are getting swept up in that masculine energy of trying to, you know, be the macho here and there?
Yeah. I mean, it's all attached to your identity, really, isn't it? When we're in the military and most people's day-to-day jobs, I don't know, you could be Rianne the school teacher or John the bin man. You're not just that person. And in the military, it's even worse. We connect our identity. When I left the Corps, as always, I'm Gareth. I used to be a Royal Marines Commando. Why should we attach that identity to us? And I mean, it's a great part of my life. It's shaped to who I've become now. But I am me right now in this moment. And that identity is a very masculine aspect. It's a very masculine thing. Both women and men have masculine and feminine energies. Get all spiritual on you now, but we have both masculine and feminine energies. And to try and remain harmonized, it's about balancing those masculine and feminine energies to be able to create this person that we want to be. So it comes back down to not caring, again, what other people think, losing that identity and just doing things that make me happy. And going to the waterfalls and writing poetry and living each day as it comes means that I'm able to sort of harmonize that masculine and feminine energy. Writing poetry is quite a feminine trait. There's a couple of books that are up there. The Way of a Superior Man is a great book. If you've not read it, make sure you do. And they discuss how drinking a beer or drinking a pint is almost a feminine process, because especially if you go to the pub on your own, which I've done, and I'm sure you've done, and lots of people have, where you sit there and you're not talking to anyone and you're thinking your own thoughts whilst drinking and trying to process that sorrow and that slight calming effect to that beer. That's a very feminine energy, and we're so caught up in this identity with masculinity that we forget the other things that are out there. So to talk about people who are still serving or colleagues around the world, whatever they might be doing, I think the biggest thing that I found was letting go of the identity, letting go of my job is who I am. I love that I was a Royal Marines Commando, but it doesn't mean anything now. What I do now and what I do in this moment is what really matters. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's the ego, isn't it? It's like,
yeah,
you build up this picture of yourself and you want to hold yourself to this image that you've given yourself. And at some point when you're no longer in the forces, or even if you just decide, right, I've been pursuing I've been given this persona as this character for too long now, and it's actually not who I am, and I want to reconnect with myself. So I found this recently. I'm still serving, and me doing a podcast whilst I'm still serving and wearing my heart on my sleeve is my attempt at saying to some of the younger lads that, you don't have to be this macho person all the time. Yes, it serves you in certain situations and certain occasions, but if you're all this macho person all the time, all you're doing is you're piling up this ego on top of yourself, and eventually you'll either lose yourself or you'll have to go for a process of regrowing and refining yourself. Which can be a really difficult and hard process. I found myself after operational tours probably drinking too much. Other people deal with things in different ways. How do you feel like maybe you dealt with? In one of your poems, you talk about trauma and stuff like that. How do you feel like you dealt with your trauma at the time, like an evolution of developing into yourself now?
I didn't deal with it. So I think I wish I knew what I know now back when I was serving and after I serving, where I saw most of my trauma. I didn't deal with it. I buried it away. I didn't talk about it. I drank too much. I would come home and just drink myself into oblivion. So when I left the Corps, I just a little bit of history quickly, just so you understand. When I left the Corps, I was medically discharged, so I have ulcerative colitis. So I only managed to do 5 years in the Royal Marines, and I didn't get to achieve everything that I wanted to. So I was pretty gutted, to be fair. I left. I was a bin man. I swept the streets. I was a drain cleaner. Didn't really do that much. Feeling sorry for myself, living on my laurels of I used to be a Royal Marine. And then my mother gave me a newspaper article, this is how long it was ago, and said they're having applicants in university for paramedics. Why didn't you give it a go? So I went in, became a paramedic, and then as soon as I qualified as a paramedic, I went straight abroad. So I longed for that excitement, that war, that everything that I was missing from the Royal Marines. So I went and did some private security in Baghdad. One thing led to another, and then I ended up working on a critical air transport jet from Dubai, and then setting up clinics for the United Nations. So I spent lots of time in Iraq, Afghan, Central African Republic. Did 6 months in the middle of nowhere in Somalia, and then I was also on the front line in Ukraine in 2014 when the war started. So I went to the MH17 plane that got shot down, etc., etc. So in this period of time, I was constantly searching for my masculinity that I felt that had been taken away from me by being medically discharged from the Marines. And Ollie Ollerton, I'm sure you know who he is. He said in one of his books that there is so much more peace at war because it's just simple. You know what you're doing. It's that fight or flight response. You're able to do things. And I remember this one situation where in East Ukraine, so it's about 2014, we had spent all day getting shelled. We then went to the MH17 plane crash where I was picking up parts of children and T-shirts and all sorts. And then that night I went to bed, woke up in the morning, got a train. About 12 hours after those incidents, I was in Cardiff sipping coffee and trying to act normal. And I just went, I can't be here. Picked up the phone and said, I need to get back. I need to go somewhere straight away. And they sent me straight to Somalia, where I felt more comfortable surrounded by Al-Shabaab than I did back home. And it took me to a point where whenever I came home and couldn't get jobs away, I drink all day. That's all I would do. Would drink. And it got to a point where I was becoming more and more depressed, spending more and more money, and didn't want to be here anymore. And I think it took me to that point to realize that I did want to be here, and I had to change a lot of things. And this is where the poetry comes in, and where understanding your feelings and starting to do lots of reflection and internal work to break those negative energies and those negative situations down.
Being you to the full is a beautiful trait, yet it wasn't something that I recognized. When my mind would take over without any haste, I'd be paralyzed as 100 million useless thoughts raced, distracting me from the sentimental realization of time. I needed a catalyst to perceive and to feel, a way to let go of time and its desire to steal. I began to conceal my true self in fear of the alchemist beginning to rear and take care of himself. When it finally all became too much, I allowed my heart to take over and commit to a life of self-love and balance that my soul permits.
I think you can really, from your poetry, I think you can really tell that you've been through a lot of stuff, because not only is it good, good poetry, it's very explains a lot, and it's very very easy to connect with. And do you know about the Renaissance man? So the Renaissance man, the term the Renaissance man is the combination of the mixture between warrior and poet, and how they're actually kind of disconnected in a way, but really deep down they are quite connected, because to be a really good warrior you have to have a full range of emotions. To, you know, the average warrior can just have hate, can just have anger, and you know, that's the usual type of stuff. But it's not until you can have empathy, love, compassion, that you can actually be the best warrior that you can be, because you can then switch from being in a firefight, in an aggressive action, to rescuing children and picking up, you know, like you say, the situations you've been in. And I see it a lot with op pitting and the extraction of entitled personnel from Afghanistan. You had paratroopers and other, you know, units out in Afghanistan that 1 minute were fighting out there, and the next minute they've completely switched up their mindset and are having to do humanitarian crisis and extract civilians. And I think all warriors are capable of having a fuller range of emotions, but we kind of fixate on the aggression and the anger and all these things, because they think that that's what basically it's the media and it's movies that make us think that masculine energy is all that is required in war, where it's not. You have to have those other range of emotions to be able to function as a unit. And if one person in the unit is having a really bad day and, you know, psychologically they're not in the right zone, if you just compounded that person who's not in the right zone with masculine energy, you'd actually just push them out. Whereas if you know, give them a bit of nurture, a bit of sympathy, you actually bring them back into the unit, which makes the unit function better. And you can do that internally with yourself as well, and make yourself function better by connecting to your own emotions, connecting to, you know, knowing and accepting when you're upset, angry, sad, depressed. Because as soon as you accept it and you acknowledge it and you see it, you can actually do something about it. And with you, you know, going and seeing that and starting to do the poetry side of things, you've connected. You've done the full circle. You've done the aggressive action, and you've done the calm and relaxed, loving and caring poetry side of things. And I think with wisdom, you become this more rounded person. And I can see it through your poetry that you've gone through that process. And I feel like I'm still on that journey, because I'm still in my poetry that I write is still very masculine energy, and I've not quite yet built up the courage to write a fully fledged heart on my sleeve. You know, this is me. This is when I cry. This is when I'm happy. You know, this is what I do when I'm playful. And I'm very envious of you and your journey, and your poetry is phenomenal. You should be very proud of yourself.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. It really does.
No,
it really does.
I writ a few poems down. Just most of your poems are quite one word explanation, like pain, play, time, run. And I'd really encourage any of the listeners to go over to your Instagram and check some of these out. Is there any other places that people can find your poetry?
Not at the moment, no. It's this constant, you know, we all still have battles with ourselves and a few bits of self-doubt. I'm currently in the process of writing a book. I'm trying my hardest, and I want to try and get back into I want to build a website where I do lots of photography as well, and videography, where I have pictures, blogs, poetry, and that's my overall game. That's what I want to achieve. So the only thing I have at the moment is the Instagram, and I use it almost as a form of accountability, because I've built up a small following, and it would be easy for me to, and it'd be easy for anyone, no matter how far you get, you can easily fall back into old ways, and easily go, well, I'm not going to do anything. Whereas Instagram allows that almost form of accountability where, well, I need to put something out. I need to be creative. I want to be creative. So let me sit in my thoughts, let me meditate, let me be present in the moment and see how I feel about something at the moment. One of my very good friends is in a bad way out in America at the moment, and it looks like he probably won't make it. And that's really cuts me deep. He's like a brother. And I haven't sat down and fully processed the emotions, but probably once I finish everything I need to do today, I'm going to have a few hours where I'm going to sit down and really process those emotions, and that's where it all comes from. But yeah, at the moment, to answer your question, going back to that, I only have Instagram, but there is going to be a website soon as soon as I pull it all together.
I think you're being quite humble. You've got nearly 7,000 followers. I think that's, that's pretty admirable for poetry these days. And not only that, it's one of those things with poetry. Most people don't make their fortunes in poetry until they die. Like Rabbie Burns, Burns Night and all that. He never got to enjoy the celebrationary sort of side of things of his poetry. But I think you just keep doing what you're doing, mate. You're doing a really, really fantastic thing. I'm don't want to blow smoke up your ass and sell you, make your head, out, grow your head any big. But your poetry is probably some of the best stuff I've heard, and it's for me, it's probably my favorite poetry that I've listened to, because I find it really easy to connect to. It's phenomenal. So the one that stands out to me the most is Play, and I go through bouts of being too serious and being too playful, and I don't know, mental health wise why I do this, but there'll be a time where I feel really playful and jokey and funny, and I'll put my humor across, and other times where I feel really insecure about being seen, being heard, being vocal, and I'll just stay quiet. And it's listening to your poem Play. It talks about that process of taking yourself too seriously, learning to let yourself, don't take yourself too seriously. And in the video, you're in the waterfall, and let me just reach over here. I recently got myself
nice
a skateboard. You say it's not been used that much, but it's kind of like one of those things where you've got to learn to fail. You have to, if you're not good at failure and you don't like accepting if you have the fear of failure, you're not going to grow as a person. So your poetry Play just basically, says, learn to fail, accept failure, because that's what's going to make you grow. That's what's going to make you better. And if you avoid all these things, that you're scared of, then you're actually just sitting in a rut. So like I say, that poem is the top of my list for yours, mate. Play. If you're listening, go check it out. Yeah, phenomenal work.
Yeah, I mean, it's coming back down to, just going on from that and failing. It comes back down to sort of you're in a child, doesn't it? I mean, do you have children at all?
Yeah, I've got two.
Yeah, so I have an 11-year-old boy, and if I look back to sort of when he was 4 or 5, he'd try everything and he won't care. And he'd play and he'd be happy without a worry in the world. And I look back and I can't see when I started writing, I couldn't see that I was ever that person or ever that sort of child. I was, of course I was. We all were. So it's about sort of harnessing that inner child, get on a skateboard, fall off 100 times. I mean, if things were easy, everybody would do them. And that's what people quit really quickly, because things get hard. I'm no good at that, so I'm not going to bother. But you're looking at it as a task. Whereas if you look at it as, okay, so what would my inner child want to do? It's a bit of fun. If you fail, it doesn't matter. What other people think of you, who cares? You're enjoying yourself, and it's being confident in that little sphere of acceptability with your mind and aligning your mind and your heart. It's beautiful.
It's like a fear of embarrassment, isn't it? And especially for people that have been in the Royal Marines, people that have been in the Parachute Regiment and other high tier type jobs where people expect you to be a certain way and a certain masculinity. People are scared. It's fear. People are fearful of being playful.
Yeah.
And, if you're trying to portray this tough guy, then you shouldn't be scared of having a little play and a little joke about and stuff like that. And, grab the bull by the horns and enjoy life, because it's not a recce. It's not rehearsal.
Yeah.
Just get on with it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's life's too short. It comes back down to my friend now. He's 44 years old. I mean, we've both lost people. We've both lost people that are close to us, and life's too short. It really is. Make the most of each day as it comes. We don't know when it's going to end, and coming back to stoicism and sort of that ego. Marcus Aurelius. Do you read much Marcus Aurelius Meditations at all?
No, I'm terrible for reading.
Marcus Aurelius had his diaries called Meditations, and it's all about stoicism, and he understood the delicateness of life, and understood his feelings in such a way. And we're now thousands of years on, and it's no different, but we're trying to almost medicalize things when everyone in humanity has always felt this way. It's just about understanding why we feel that way.
Yeah, I think sometimes we see that, this masculinity being lost is a modern thing. But it's not. It's always been there. There's always been, people questioning themselves and doubting themselves and having to go through a process of finding themselves. It's like, it's always been there. It's just like how they used to say, children these days, back in 2000 years ago, the Romans would have been saying, children these days, they're terrible. And then 1,000 years ago, the Vikings would have been saying, children these days, they're too soft. And nowadays they're saying it to the children of nowadays. So it's always happening.
It's always happening, and it will always happen.
Yeah. All right. Cheers, Gareth. Have you got any poetry you'd like to read out today?
Yeah, I'll read one out. I'm gonna have to get it off my phone. I don't memorize them. I try my best to, and once I start, then I tend to remember them. Where is it now? So this one's called My Life. Yeah. By the way, this is the first time I've ever done this.
Is it?
Yeah, I read them out. I read them out to myself, and I film myself reading them, and I write the poetry, and I read, but in front of an audience, I never have done. But it's definitely something I want to start doing. So this is a great opportunity for me.
Yeah. Grab the bull by the horns then.
My life. There was a time when I thought to take my life. I struggled to convey my emotions as my heart was drowning, letting my mind run away. It was a Trojan, causing walls to be built surrounding me and rising like mountains. Why was I poisoning myself? I longed to feel intimacy in a world I just didn't get. But when you step into that ice cold water, the world slows as you gasp a big breath. All of a sudden, your vision becomes broader, and you no longer will for death. You believe in your life's purpose. You're no longer battling against a furnace, and you notice how sublime life is in the stillness and out of one's mind. It's good to be alive.
That's perfect. Well done, Gareth. That's on the ball. It's a good
Cheers,
way
man.
of summing it up, I guess. The whole podcast episode today, that was put, your character and who you are in the forefront. That's excellent. I noticed that you've done some of the cold water submersion, and you mentioned it in the poetry there. So I've done a bit of cold water submersion. Amazing. I don't know why, but it is absolutely amazing.
It's incredible. I hated it when we used to do icebreaker drills in the Royal Marines. When we ski into that hole in the ice, it was miserable. Why would you ever want to do that? But now I'll happily pop to the waterfalls at Brecon Beacon and get in the water. I love it. It's so exhilarating and fills you with, there's no other thought in your mind when you get into that water.
That's the best thing. It's that cleansing, isn't it? It's like you cannot think of anything else other than how cold the water is, which actually sort of cleanses your mind, and it also stimulates your fight or flight responses. So then for the rest of the day, you're going to function, at a more a more vigilant state. But then they also say that the coldness actually calms your heart rate down and brings your heart rate down. So you're actually, maybe peak performance, your vigilance is high, but you're actually calm.
Yeah.
Which is maybe that's the science behind it. I don't know, but it definitely works, and I love it. I've got a tub. I got a tub in the garden. It snowed recently as well, so I'm going to get in there.
Make sure you do. No, it's good. I live in a flat. But as soon as I've got a garden, I'll be getting myself a tub as well.
Yeah, happy days. Any final points you want to give the listeners before we wrap it up, Gareth?
No, that's it really. Thanks for welcoming me on the podcast. It's very much appreciated. I've enjoyed the process. Thanks for letting me read out a poem on live to everyone as well. It's great. It's fantastic. So no, thank you very much.
No, brilliant. Just to give if you don't mind, the link for your Instagram.
Yeah. So my name on Instagram is Gareth S Media. And that's where you can find me. If there are when there is websites, it will be linked to on that page as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, I would definitely implore everyone that's listening to this right now to go and check out Gareth's Instagram page, because it is phenomenal. Not only his poetry, but your videography. I know you've got in there that you're photographer on your Instagram there, and yeah, the videography is incredible. So that creativity spirit is flowing in you, and you should be proud of the stuff you're putting out. It's great work.
That means a lot, honestly. It really does. Thank you.
No worries. All right, I'll catch you soon, mate. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Cheers.
Every moment waited is a moment wasted, but the present moment can't be broken. When you see that you are love, you'll see your truth and rise above.
Hello everyone, you're listening to Blue Pigment Podcast. If you want to become a patron of this show, please go to patreon.com/bluepigment. You will be helping me help the talent that I find along the way. Not only that, the podcast is an advocate for mental health and the positive message in which we want to send about mental health. So if you are a bit about that and you want to jump on board, then please become a patron at patreon.com/bluepigment. Would love to have you on board. And not only that, you'll get the chance to get some free stuff. I'll be giving another big giveaway soon. To find out what it is, go to patreon.com/bluepigment, become a patron and get yourself some free stuff.
Sponsoring the podcast today are Airborne Fit. Airborne Fit is more than just a fitness brand. It represents true team spirit and the coming together of members to create that family feeling. With the support and encouragement of each other, members become motivated, remain disciplined, and work with pure grit and determination to achieve their goals. Airborne's Fit motto is fitter, faster, stronger together. Check out airbornefit.com or visit their Instagram at airbornefitofficial.
Blue Pigment Podcast is sponsored by Huscarl. Go to huscarl.co.uk and use the discount code BLUEPIGMENT for 15% off. Get yourself some t-shirts, stickers, baseball caps, hoodies, printouts, and many more products from Huscarl. Blue Pigment Podcast, sponsored by Huscarl.
The opinions or views expressed on this podcast are solely of my own or the guests and do not represent the opinions or views of anybody else or the Ministry of Defence.
Shish kebab, Shawshank Redemption, Chicago! You're out of there!